Okay, tonight hopefully we can go through two important suttas. Today is 12th of September and we come to Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 9, Sammaditthi Sutta, right view. As you know, right view is the first factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. So it's a very important topic. Thus have I heard, on one occasion the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There the Venerable Sariputta addressed the monks thus, "Friends, monks." "Friend," they replied. The Venerable Sariputta said this, one of right view. He said, "Friends, in what way is a noble disciple one of right view, whose view is straight, one who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" And they said, "Indeed, friend, we would come from far away to learn from the Venerable Sariputta the meaning of this statement. It would be good if the Venerable Sariputta would explain the meaning of this statement. Having heard it from him, the monk will remember it." "Then, friends, listen and attend closely to what I shall say." "Yes, friend," the monks replied. The Venerable Sariputta said, "When, friends, a noble disciple understands the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, in that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma." Let's stop here for a moment. So here, Prabhu Sariputta says, right view has to do with understanding unwholesome, the unwholesome, and the wholesome, and their roots. This wholesome and unwholesome refers to states of mind. Unwholesome states of mind give you suffering. Wholesome states of mind give you happiness. If you remember that in one of the previous suttas we studied in the Samyutta Nikaya, and they talk about Dhamma, I think contemplation of Dhamma, they talk about the wholesome and the unwholesome, the skillful and the unskillful, the good and the evil and all that, being able to differentiate. That is what the Dhamma is trying to teach us, so that we lead our life in a skillful way, not in an unskillful way, so that we become happy instead of suffer. So the Dhamma essentially is about this, what is wholesome and what is unwholesome. And what, friends, is the unwholesome? What is the root of the unwholesome? What is the wholesome? What is the root of the wholesome? Killing living beings is unwholesome. Taking what is not given is unwholesome. Misconduct in sensual pleasures is unwholesome. False speech is unwholesome. Malicious speech is unwholesome. Harsh speech is unwholesome. Gossip is unwholesome. Covetousness is unwholesome. Ill will is unwholesome. Wrong view is unwholesome. This is called the unwholesome. Stop here for a moment. These 10 things mentioned here are the 10 evil karmas, 10 unskillful karmas. If we perform these unwholesome karmas, then we will suffer for it when the result, the vipaka, ripens. So the first 3 is bodily evil karma. Killing, stealing, and adultery. The first 3 has the body evil karma. After that, there are 4 connected with speech. False speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip. This is the 4 evil verbal karmas. And then followed by 3 evil mental karmas. Covetousness, ill will, and wrong view. Covetousness is wanting to possess others things. Ill will is anger. Wrong view is not believing in karma vipaka, not believing that there are holy men, not believing that there are realms of rebirth. This is wrong view. So these are the 10 evil karmas, so they are called the unwholesome. And what is the root of the unwholesome? Greed is a root of the unwholesome. Hatred is a root of the unwholesome. Delusion is a root of the unwholesome. This is called the root of the unwholesome. So, unwholesome actions, karma, are motivated by these three roots, greed, hatred and delusion. And what is the wholesome? Abstention from killing living beings is wholesome. Abstention from taking what is not given is wholesome. Abstention from misconduct in sensual pleasures is wholesome. Abstention from false speech. Abstention from malicious speech. Abstention from harsh speech. Abstention from gossip. Uncovetousness. Non-ill will. Right view. All these are the wholesome. And what is the root of the wholesome? Non-greed is the root of the wholesome. Non-hatred and non-delusion are the three roots of the wholesome. This is called the root of the wholesome. When a noble disciple has thus understood the unwholesome and the root of the unwholesome, the wholesome and the root of the wholesome, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates, roots out the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So the Aryan disciple, having understood the unwholesome and the wholesome and their roots, then he practices to abandon lust, aversion, and the tendency to views and the conceit I am, and then finally he becomes liberated. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands nutriment, the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to the cessation of nutriment. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is nutriment? Nutriment here is ahara. What is the origin of nutriment? What is the cessation of nutriment? What is the way leading to the cessation of nutriment? There are 4 kinds of nutriment for the maintenance of beings that already have come to be, and for the support of those seeking a new existence. What for? They are physical food as nutriment, gross or subtle, contact as the second, mental volition as the third, and consciousness as the fourth. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of nutriment. With the cessation of craving, there is the cessation of nutriment. The way leading to the cessation of nutriment is just this Noble Eightfold Path. That is, right view, right thoughts, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection and right concentration. Let's stop here for a moment. These 4 nutriments, you remember, we have come across them in the Samyutta Nikaya recently. These 4 nutriments for maintenance of beings and for the support of those about to come into a new existence, to be born. So the first one is physical food. This is what we need to maintain this body, this physical body. We need physical food. Then contact is the second, because when there is contact at the 6 sense doors, then feeling, perception, volition and all that arise. So for the mind to continue working, you need the contact. Third one, mental volition, should be the will to live. Because of the will to live, we continue to live. Consciousness as the fourth. Consciousness is for the being in the womb. Consciousness must descend into the fertilized egg, and then that is the support for those seeking a new existence. Once you have consciousness in the fertilized egg, then that being comes into existence there in the fertilized egg. So these are the 4 nutriments. When a noble disciple has thus understood nutriment, the origin of nutriment, the cessation of nutriment, and the way leading to the cessation of nutriment, he entirely abandons the underlying tendency to greed. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight and has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" And he said, "There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma." So now this third interpretation of right view is the one that is generally quoted in the suttas. Normally when the Buddha says a person has Aryan right view, it means that he understands the Four Noble Truths, suffering, origin of suffering, cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And what is suffering? What is the origin of suffering? What is the cessation of suffering? What is the way leading to the cessation of suffering? Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, sickness is suffering, death or dying is suffering, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and despair are suffering. Not to obtain what wants is suffering. In short, the five aggregates of attachment are suffering. This is called suffering. And what is the origin of suffering? It is craving, which brings renewal of being. It is accompanied by delight and lust, and delights in this and that. That is, craving for sensual pleasures, craving for being, and craving for non-being. This is called the origin of suffering. Now what is the cessation of suffering? It is the remainderless fading away and ceasing, the giving up, relinquishing, letting go, and rejecting of that same craving. This is called the cessation of suffering. And what is the way leading to the cessation of suffering? It is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. This is called the way leading to the cessation of suffering. When a noble disciple has thus understood suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the way leading to the cessation of suffering, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So here you see, this is a description of suffering. Birth, aging, sickening, dying, and then not to get what you want is suffering. To be separated from those you love is suffering. To be near your enemies, those that you dislike, is also suffering. And then in short, the five aggregates of attachment are suffering. The five aggregates of attachment are body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. So, and that is basically body and mind. Body and then the mind consists of the four things. Feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. And the origin of suffering is craving. Craving, the delighting in this and that. This is what people in the world always look for, trying to find happiness, enjoyment in this and in that, different ways. So when you enjoy, you attach to it, that is the cause of suffering. And saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" And he said, "There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands aging and death, the origin of aging and death, the cessation of aging and death, and the way leading to the cessation of aging and death. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma." And what is aging and death? This aging and death basically is suffering. So here is talking about person understanding suffering, the origin of suffering, cessation of suffering. And what is aging and death? What is the origin of aging and death? What is the cessation of aging and death? What is the way leading to the cessation of aging and death? The aging of beings in the various orders of beings, their old age, brokenness of teeth, greyness of hair, wrinkling of skin, decline of life, weakness of faculties. This is called aging. The passing of beings out of the various orders of beings, the passing away, dissolution, disappearance, dying, completion of time, dissolution of the aggregates, laying down of the body. This is called death. So this aging and this death are what is called aging and death. The arising of birth, there is the arising of aging and death. With the cessation of birth, there is the cessation of aging and death. The way leading to the cessation of aging and death is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood aging and death, the origin of aging and death, the cessation of aging and death, the way leading to the cessation of aging and death, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way, too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So here, basically, he's saying this is about dependent origination, how suffering comes about. And the following passages here deal with dependent origination. First, it deals with birth. Saying, "Good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" And he said, "There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands birth, the origin of birth, and the cessation of birth, and the way leading to the cessation of birth. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is birth? What is the origin of birth? What is the cessation of birth? What is the way leading to the cessation of birth? The birth of beings in the various orders of beings, their coming to birth, precipitation in a womb, generation, manifestation of the aggregates, obtaining the basis for contact, that means the 6 bases. This is called birth. With the arising of being, there is the arising of birth. With the cessation of being, there is the cessation of birth. The way leading to the cessation of birth is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood birth, the origin of birth, the cessation of birth, and the way leading to the cessation of birth, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Saying, "Good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands being, the origin of being, the cessation of being, and the way leading to the cessation of being. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is being? What is the origin of being? What is the cessation of being? What is the way leading to the cessation of being? There are these 3 kinds of being: sense sphere being, fine material being, and immaterial being. With the arising of clinging, there is the arising of being. With the cessation of clinging, there is the cessation of being. The way leading to the cessation of being is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood being, the origin of being, the cessation of being, and the way leading to the cessation of being, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. I'll stop here for a moment to explain this being. Here he says there are 3 kinds of being: sense sphere being, fine material being, and immaterial being. So because of that, sometimes people translate this word bhava, being, as existence. There is sense sphere existence, fine material existence, and immaterial existence. But the more correct translation, I think, is being. Being means somebody that has come into being, something that has come into being. For example, mosquito, even such a small thing as a mosquito, if it comes to suck your blood and you intend to kill it, you raise your hand. The moment it notices this, it quickly flies away. Why? Because it considers itself as a being. It has come into being. It has a self. It has a self. So, because where does this self come from? From the perception, I am, I exist. Once you have this perception, I am, I exist, you come into being. Okay. Now there are plants, like for example trees. they have some kind of consciousness also, but they are not beings. Why? Because they don't have this perception, I am, I exist. So you take a knife or you take an axe and you chop the tree down, it does not suffer. But if you take a being and you chop that being, it suffers because it has the I. It feels that I am attacked, I am cut, so I suffer. It's because we have this being, this I, that we suffer. If there is no perception of I am or I exist, you don't suffer. So that's why we have a precept against killing living beings. There's a precept against killing living beings because when you kill a living being, it suffers. It thinks, I am being chopped, I am being attacked. But if you chop a tree, it is not a living being. It does not feel, I am attacked, I am cut up. Right? So that's the reason why there's a precept against killing living beings, because you cause suffering to that being. If you chop this table, it does not have this concept that I exist, so it does not suffer. But this table has no consciousness. But plant has consciousness. But even though a plant has consciousness, it is not like the consciousness, developed consciousness like a being. Once it has this concept, I am or I exist, then it considers itself as a separate being from other beings. It is an individual, so that when you harm it in some way, it suffers. So that's why this precept is a precept against killing living beings. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. My friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands clinging or attachment, the origin of clinging, the cessation of clinging, and the way leading to the cessation of clinging. In that way he is one of right view, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is clinging? What is the origin of clinging? What is the cessation of clinging? What is the way leading to the cessation of clinging? There are these four kinds of clinging or attachment. Clinging to sensual pleasures, clinging to views, clinging to rules and observances, and clinging to a doctrine of self. With the arising of craving, there is the arising of clinging. With the cessation of craving, there is the cessation of clinging. The way leading to the cessation of clinging is just this noble eightfold path. That is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood clinging, the origin of clinging, the cessation of clinging, and the way leading to the cessation of clinging, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So this clinging, when a being is dying, it is still clinging, attaching to sensual pleasures or to views or to rules and rituals or to a self. So because of this clinging, when it dies, the energy brings it to birth. Because of this clinging, there is this perception of a being. Because when you cling to sensual pleasures, then you feel I am enjoying sensual pleasures. When you cling to views, it is my view. Similarly, you are clinging to the rules and observances and the self. So clinging brings about this bhava existence, craving. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands craving, the origin of craving, the cessation of craving, and the way leading to the cessation of craving. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is craving? What is the origin of craving? What is the cessation of craving? What is the way leading to the cessation of craving? There are these 6 classes of craving. Craving for forms, craving for sounds, craving for odors, craving for flavors, or taste, craving for tangibles or touch, craving for mind objects or thoughts. With the arising of feeling, there is the arising of craving. With the cessation of feeling, there is the cessation of craving. The way leading to the cessation of craving is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood craving, the origin of craving, the cessation of craving, and the way leading to the cessation of craving, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So here, craving, there are 6 types of craving. Craving for forms, sounds, smells, tastes, etc. And with the arising of feeling is the arising of craving. This feeling is good feeling, and there is good feeling, then you crave for it. You want to prolong your good feeling. So from good feeling, you have craving for it. And from craving, you have attachment. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands feeling, the origin of feeling, the cessation of feeling, and the way leading to the cessation of feeling. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is feeling? What is the origin of feeling? What is the cessation of feeling? What is the way leading to the cessation of feeling? There are these 6 classes of feeling. Feeling born of eye contact, feeling born of ear contact, feeling born of nose contact, feeling born of tongue contact, feeling born of body contact, feeling born of mind contact. With the arising of contact, there is the arising of feeling. With the cessation of contact, there is the cessation of feeling. The way leading to the cessation of feeling is just this Noble Eightfold Path. It is right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood feeling, the origin of feeling, cessation of feeling, and the way leading to the cessation of feeling, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So feeling is born from contact at the 6 sense basis. When form comes before your eye and the seeing consciousness arises and followed by feeling. Similarly, when the sound impinges on your ear, then you have this hearing consciousness arising, followed by feeling. So it's because of contact at the 6 sense basis that cause a feeling to arise. So the first 5 types of contact is outside contact. The form, the sounds, the smell, taste and touch. Those are external. And then the mind contact is the inner one, thoughts arising. Saying, good friend, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands contact, the origin of contact, the cessation of contact, and the way leading to the cessation of contact. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is contact? What is the origin of contact? What is the cessation of contact? What is the way leading to the cessation of contact? There are these 6 classes of contact: eye contact, ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact. The arising of the 6-fold base, salayatana, there is the arising of contact. With the cessation of the 6-fold base, there is the cessation of contact. The way leading to the cessation of contact is just this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood contact, the origin of contact, the cessation of contact, and the way leading to the cessation of contact, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So these 6 contacts, 6 types of contact are at the 6 sense basis. So only because you have the 6 sense basis, then only you can have contact. So the origin of contact is the 6 sense basis. Saying, good friends, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma? And he said, there might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands the 6-fold base, the origin of the 6-fold base. That means the 6 sense basis. The cessation of the 6-fold base, and the way leading to the cessation of the 6-fold base. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is the 6-fold base? What is the origin of the 6-fold base? What is the cessation of the 6-fold base? What is the way leading to the cessation of the 6-fold base? There are these 6 bases: the eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, the mind base. With the arising of mentality, materiality, that means nama rupa, there is the arising of the 6-fold base. With the cessation of mentality, materiality, there is the cessation of the 6-fold base. The way leading to the cessation of the 6-fold base is just this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood the 6-fold base, the origin of the 6-fold base, the cessation of the 6-fold base, and the way leading to the cessation of the 6-fold base, he here now makes an end of suffering. And that way too a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So the origin of the 6 sense bases is nama rupa, mentality, materiality. Mentality, materiality, nama rupa is not body and mind. Mentality and materiality is phenomena. What consciousness is conscious of. The object of consciousness. This nama rupa and consciousness, vijnana, they arise together and cease together. They are like Siamese twins, conjoined. So whenever consciousness arises, it must have an object of consciousness, and that object of consciousness is nama rupa. So once you have consciousness and nama rupa, then you are conscious of the 6 sense bases, because the 6 sense bases is the consciousness arises at the 6 sense bases. So the origin of the 6 sense bases can be said to be consciousness and also nama rupa, mentality, materiality, because the 2 of them are always together. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands mentality, materiality, nama rupa, the origin of mentality, materiality, the cessation of mentality, materiality, and the way leading to the cessation of mentality, materiality. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is mentality, materiality? What is the origin of mentality, materiality? What is the cessation of mentality, materiality? What is the way leading to the cessation of mentality, materiality? Feeling, perception, volition, contact and attention, these are called mentality. The 4 great elements and the material form derived from the 4 great elements, these are called materiality. So this mentality and this materiality is what is called mentality, materiality. With the arising of consciousness, there is the arising of mentality, materiality. The cessation of consciousness, there is the cessation of mentality, materiality. The way leading to the cessation of mentality, materiality, is just this Noble Eightfold Path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood mentality, materiality, the origin of mentality, materiality, the cessation of mentality, materiality, and the way leading to the cessation of mentality, materiality, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So here you see, as I said just now, mentality, materiality is not body and mind. Mind normally consists of 4 things, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. But here you see in the description of mentality, nama, there is no consciousness. There is no consciousness, so it cannot be mind. So I mentioned just now that mentality, materiality is phenomena, what consciousness is conscious of. So when consciousness arises, we have 2 kinds of object. One is mental object and one is physical object. So the mental object of consciousness, that is nama, mentality, and that is feeling, perception, volition, contact and attention. And then the material part of phenomena, the physical part that we are conscious of, is the 4 great elements. But the 4 great elements, you must remember, is not exactly physical. It is just characteristic of this physical world that is perceived by the mind. So like these 4 great elements are earth, water, fire and wind. So earth represents the hardness element. So what we perceive, what the consciousness perceives to be hard, that is the earth element. Earth, water. Water is the property of cohesion, property of matter to cohere together. The water makes things cohere together. For example, because there's water element in our body, we have a certain shape. If you took away all the water from our body, the whole body becomes like powder. It collapses, cannot have a shape. So this quality of making the things cohere together, this that is perceived by the mind, this is the water element. And then the fire element is the heat element, and the wind element is the motion element. That motion that is perceived by consciousness. So these are the four great elements that is perceived by consciousness and the mental part. So this is mentality, materiality. And the origin of mentality, materiality is consciousness. And the origin of consciousness can also be said to be mentality, materiality, since they arise together and cease together. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands consciousness, the origin of consciousness, the cessation of consciousness, the way leading to the cessation of consciousness. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is consciousness? What is the origin of consciousness? What is the cessation of consciousness? What is the way leading to the cessation of consciousness? There are these 6 classes of consciousness: eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness. With the arising of sankhara, there is the arising of consciousness. With the cessation of sankhara, sankhara here I can translate as volition. With the arising of volition, there is the arising of consciousness. With the cessation of volition, there is the cessation of consciousness. The way leading to the cessation of consciousness is this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood consciousness, the origin of consciousness, the cessation of consciousness, and the way leading to the cessation of consciousness, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. So consciousness, there are 6 types of consciousness corresponding to the 6 sense bases. And then the origin of consciousness is sankhara. This word sankhara here is written formations. But in the connected discourses, the translation by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, he has used the word volitional formations. So he acknowledges it has to do with volition. So here I think the appropriate word to use is volition. Because of volition there is consciousness. Because you must remember, consciousness is not an unending stream of consciousness. Consciousness arises and passes away, due to conditions. So each time consciousness arises and passes away, after it passes away, what makes it arise again? That is volition. Because of the will to live, consciousness arises again. And then it dies away. And then again, because of the will to live, it arises and passes away. So this sankhara has to do with volition. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" And he said, "There might be, friends. And friends, a noble disciple understands volition, the origin of volition, sankhara, the cessation of volition, and the way leading to the cessation of volition. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma." This word volition, sankhara, in the 5 aggregates of attachment, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, there in the description of the 5 aggregates, which is body and mind, the word sankhara is translated as volition, willpower. Now here, although it's connected with volition, but better translation is conditional, because when it comes to the three types of sankhara, then you see you have to use the word conditional. So, when friends, a noble disciple understands sankhara, the origin of sankhara, the cessation of sankhara, and the way leading to the cessation of sankhara, in that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what are sankharas? What is the origin of sankharas? What is the cessation of sankharas? What is the way leading to the cessation of sankharas? There are these three kinds of sankharas. Chitta, this is kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. That is body conditioner, verbal conditioner, and mental conditioner. With the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of sankharas. With the cessation of ignorance, there is the cessation of sankharas. The way leading to the cessation of sankharas is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood sankharas, the origin of sankharas, the cessation of sankharas, and the way leading to the cessation of sankharas, he here and now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Stop here for a moment. This word sankhara, you notice here there is a set of three sankharas. The set of three sankharas is kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. And this word sankhara, most appropriate translation would be conditional, because the body conditioner, kaya sankhara, is explained in some other sutta as in and out breaths, breathing. The body continues to exist, continues to be alive because of breathing. So the conditioner, the body conditioner, or the body condition is breathing. The verbal conditioner or the verbal condition is thoughts. It's explained in some other sutta. Why? Because you must think first. Only after thinking that you can break into speech, that you can talk. So the verbal condition or speech condition is thoughts. And the mental condition or the mental conditioner is perception and feeling, because for the mind to work, you must have consciousness, and consciousness is dependent on this perception and feeling. They come together. When there is perception and feeling, there is consciousness, and the mind works. So the mind condition or the mind conditioner is perception and feeling. And these three things, they are related to the will to live. You can see the breathing. The breathing is connected with our will to live, and the thinking also, and the perception and feeling, which also means consciousness. So these three things also have to do with the nutriments. Remember earlier we read about the four nutriments. So these three conditioners are connected with the four nutriments for the continued existence of a being. So it has to do with the will to live. So because of the will to live, that is why consciousness comes about. Every consciousness arises and passes away, because dependent on this sankhara, this volition. Saying, "Good friend," the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. "But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma?" There might be, friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands ignorance, the origin of ignorance, the cessation of ignorance, and the way leading to the cessation of ignorance. In that way he is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what is ignorance? What is the origin of ignorance? What is the cessation of ignorance? What is the way leading to the cessation of ignorance? Not knowing about suffering, not knowing about the origin of suffering, not knowing about the cessation of suffering, not knowing about the way leading to the cessation of suffering. This is called ignorance. In other words, ignorance means ignorance of the Four Noble Truths. With the arising of the asavas, the taints, there is the arising of ignorance. With the cessation of the asavas, there is the cessation of ignorance. The way leading to the cessation of ignorance is just this Noble Eightfold Path. that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood ignorance, the origin of ignorance, the cessation of ignorance, and the way leading to the cessation of ignorance, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view and has arrived at this true Dhamma. Seeing good friends, the monks delighted and rejoiced in the Venerable Sariputta's words. Then they asked him a further question. But friend, might there be another way in which a noble disciple is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma? And he said, there might be friends. When friends, a noble disciple understands asavas, the origin of the asavas, the cessation of the asavas, and the way leading to the cessation of the asavas. In that way he is one of right view, whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma and has arrived at this true Dhamma. And what are the asavas? What is the origin of the asavas? What is the cessation of the asavas? What is the way leading to the cessation of the asavas? There are these three asavas, the asava of sensual desire, the asava of being, and the asava of ignorance. With the arising of ignorance, there is the arising of the asavas. With the cessation of ignorance, there is the cessation of the asavas. The way leading to the cessation of the asavas is just this noble eightfold path, that is, right view, right thoughts, etc. When a noble disciple has thus understood the asavas, the origin of the asavas, the cessation of the asavas, and the way leading to the cessation of the asavas, entirely abandons the underlying tendency to lust. He abolishes the underlying tendency to aversion. He extirpates the underlying tendency to the view and conceit, I am. And by abandoning ignorance and arousing true knowledge, he here now makes an end of suffering. In that way too, a noble disciple is one of right view, and whose view is straight, who has perfect confidence in the Dhamma, and has arrived at this true Dhamma. That is what the Venerable Sariputta said. The monks were satisfied and delighted in the Venerable Sariputta's words. These last two parts I read together because they are dependent on each other. The origin of ignorance is the asavas, and the origin of the asavas is ignorance. They condition each other. That's why I read them together. So what is asavas? Asavas I usually translate as uncontrolled mental outflows. Uncontrolled mental outflows. The uncontrolled flowing of consciousness. Because of the uncontrolled flowing of consciousness that rebirth takes place because the world exists only in consciousness, in the seeing consciousness, the hearing, smelling, taste, touch, and thinking consciousness. So, because of ignorance, the asavas continue to flow in an ordinary worldling. The asavas are uncontrolled; they continue to flow, the flow of consciousness. And similarly, the other way around, because of the flow of uncontrolled flow of the asavas, basically the consciousness and also the other defilements mentioned here, sensual desire, being, ignorance. Another one mentioned in some other sutta is views. So this flow of the asavas, of this sensual desire, being, ignorance, and the flow of views, etc., they condition ignorance. So these two are interrelated. They are just like just now I mentioned, mentality, materiality, and vijnana, and consciousness. Consciousness and mentality, materiality condition each other. So that's the ultimate origin of suffering. That is ignorance, and you can also say the asavas is the first origin of suffering, and because of ignorance, then you have this volition, sankhara, and then because of sankhara, you have consciousness flowing, and because of consciousness, you have mentality, materiality, phenomena, what consciousness is conscious of, and because of these two, consciousness and mentality, materiality, you have the sixfold base, six sense bases. Because consciousness must arise at the six sense basis. And because of the six sense basis, you have contact. And contact gives rise to feeling. And good feelings give rise to craving. And craving gives rise to clinging or attachment. And clinging or attachment gives rise to being, the I am, the conceit. And the being gives rise to the realization that you are born into the world. You have just come into the world, birth. And because of birth, there must be aging and sickening and dying, and the whole spectrum of dukkha, suffering. So that's the end of the sutta. So this is a very detailed exposition on right view. So here, Brother Sariputta says right view doesn't mean only understanding the Four Noble Truths, understanding all these things that are connected to the Four Noble Truths. These are the 12 links of dependent origination which are connected to the Four Noble Truths. Because these 12 links are connected with suffering, how suffering arises. So we have used up 56 minutes, so I don't think we have time for the Satipatthana Sutta. We have to do that tomorrow. Anything to discuss? If we are able to do the sutta in 1 hour, it's already very fast. There are some monks, some scholar monks, they go into details of the Pali words. They might take maybe more than 10 hours to finish this one sutta.
The formations, formation, would be appropriate to say that it is also karma.
This word is karma is an interpretation by the traditional Buddhists, those who follow the commentaries, and but then they made a mistake because there is another separate set of sankharas connected with karma, and in Pali they are called kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and mano sankhara. If you look into the various suttas in the Nikayas, you find these two sets are used in different contexts. What is mentioned here is kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. The last one is chitta sankhara. The one that has to do with karma is mano sankhara. So that I have mentioned in my book, Dependent Origination. If you have a look at my book, Dependent Origination, I have quoted a few suttas to say that in the context of dependent origination, the set that is used is always kaya sankhara, vachi sankhara, and chitta sankhara. It is not mano sankhara. And the mano sankhara set is always used in the sense of karma. So I think that is a mistake that the commentaries have made. And so a lot of books, a lot of monks, they just like to follow the commentaries. Whereas the Buddha says that we should rely on his suttas.
Would you help clarify one point? When we have contact. For example, eye contact.
Okay.
Then we have eye consciousness.
Yeah.
So does feeling come from eye consciousness or it comes from consciousness? So we have 6 consciousness, right? Because of these 6 sense stages.
Yes.
So does feeling arises directly from whatever sense stages, the consciousness of that particular sense stages, or does it have to, aware by consciousness before feeling arises?
You see, the mind works very fast, and when there is contact at any one of the 6 sense doors, for example, the eye consciousness, then this eye consciousness arises, and then according to the Buddha's suttas, it is followed by feeling, perception, and all that. But because these conscious moments, they arise and pass away, then the mind, once you have this contact, then there is the feeling, there is the perception, and the mind starts to work. It may, because of the perception, you may have thinking, you may have volition, you may have desire, and all that. So the whole series of feeling, perception, volition, consciousness, they all arise very fast. So it's very hard to differentiate which one arises first. But according to the Buddha's words, immediately after the contact at any one of the six sense bases, feeling arises first, followed by perception. Feeling means it's either a pleasant contact or unpleasant contact only. And then after that, you have this perception that you perceive it as something. Okay. So, for example, if you have for example, just as an example, say one night, suddenly you see a ghost, and then the feeling arises is not a very pleasant feeling. Then after that, perception, you don't know how to perceive it because it's something new to you. You haven't seen it before. So your perception is not a standard perception. Then the mind starts to try to, like a computer, trying to make sense of it. And because you cannot make sense of it, then fear arises and all that. So it must, this feeling and perception must come first.
A person can come from right here and there can be more ways now, but it's not exclusively that it's 15 ways we could enter to and
But actually, even though it appears like 15 ways, it's basically one way.
It all comes together, like you enter to, it's like you enter to any point of the Sammaditthi.
Yeah, it's all about suffering. It's all connected to suffering. The Buddha says that every world system, you have three layers. Firstly, a world system consists of a sun. The Buddha says a star. So if we look into the sky at night, wherever we see a star, a twinkling star, that is a world system. Okay, and every world system, the Buddha says, consists of three realms, or three levels. The lowest is the desire realm, sensual desire realm. And there you have the lowest are the three woeful planes. The lowest is the hell realm, and then slightly better than the hell realm is the animal realm, and better than the animal realm is the ghost realm. And these are the three woeful planes. And then above that, you have the happy destination of rebirth, humans and heavenly beings. So above the three woeful planes, you have the human beings. And then above the human beings, you have six heavens, still inside the sensual desire realm. So the three woeful planes plus the six heavens plus the human is 10 planes. 10 planes inside the sensual desire realm. And then above the sensual desire, this sensual desire realm, the beings are controlled by sensual desire. So because of that, they are differentiated into male and female. Okay, male and female. Then higher than that is the form realm, rupa loka. This form realm consists of the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana heavens. Okay, and to be reborn in that form realm, you generally have to attain the jhanas, the rupa jhanas, the form jhanas, to be reborn in that realm. And when you are reborn in that realm, the body is different from the sensual desire realm. Sensual desire, I mentioned, they have male and female. But in this form realm, you have unisex. The body is a ball of light. It's a shining ball of light. The higher the jhana heaven, the more bright the ball of light. And then the highest is the formless realm. It is called the formless realm because other beings cannot see it. Even the devas in the form realm, those who have attained to the first, second and third and fourth jhanas, they cannot see these higher devas, because these higher devas in that formless realm, they have attained arupa jhana, formless absorption, formless jhana, to be reborn in that realm. Their mind has opened up into boundless space, boundless consciousness and all that. So because of that, their body is huge and extremely fine. It is so fine that other devas cannot see it. So that's why it's called formless. So when a person has the perception that I exist, you either exist as a sensual desire realm being, or a form realm being, or a formless realm being. That's meant by the three bhava, the three beings. Okay. Now there are some books that say that the formless realm beings, they have no body. They have no body. They only have consciousness. But this is contradictory to what the Buddha says in the suttas. The Buddha says you cannot have consciousness without the other of the five aggregates. The five aggregates, once you have consciousness, the other four aggregates must come together. Body, feeling, perception, volition must come together with consciousness. In other words, consciousness must reside in a body. Consciousness cannot exist by itself. It must reside in a body. But on the other hand, you have a type of being called asanya satta in the fourth jhana plane, where they have a body but no consciousness. That is possible, to have a body without consciousness for a long time. They are reborn there, and then once consciousness appears, they die and they fall down from there. So you can have a being, maybe you cannot call it a being because it is without consciousness. It is only a body, asanya satta. On the other hand, the Buddha says, if you have consciousness, the other four aggregates must come together with it. Say again.
I might be wrong. Once you have consciousness, the I exists.
Okay.
So how can the conscious body exist without the
but that,
body existing without the consciousness?
Yeah.
Then is it gone into the nirvana already?
No.
The I finishes. If I understand correctly, the I is for an arahant, there is no more the asava, that is no more I. So that's where the path on is actually entering into nirvana.
Okay, but even before entering into Nibbana, he has no I. He has consciousness, but he has no I, no self. Right? So it's not necessary that when you have consciousness, you must have an I, a self.
Consciousness cannot exist without a body. So when the person passes away, there is consciousness in but they don't have body.
Which being?
When a human being passes away, what remains?
It depends on where he is reborn. If a human being dies and is due to be reborn in hell, the sutta say that the hell realm beings will come and drag him down to hell. Okay. Now the interesting thing is, what do they drag? They must drag a body, So this is like our Chinese concept, this linh hun, linh fan. It is not contradictory to the Buddha's teachings. What in English we call a soul. A soul is not contradictory to the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha never said there is no soul. The Buddha said there is no atta. This word atta, people have used the translation soul in the wrong way. Just like when they first translated jhana, they said jhana means trance. So when you attain jhana, you are in a state of trance. Bodo, you don't know what's happening around you. That's not jhana. So in a similar way, when a being dies, there is what we call a soul. But this soul is a bundle of energy. It's a bundle of energy. The Buddha said, anatta means there is no thing that is unchanging, which remains the same. If there's something unchanging remains the same, even if it's very small, you can say this is I. But if it's changing, it means it is arising and passing away. Everything arises and passes away. So, for example, our body is made up of cells. Okay, trillions of cells. If you pinpoint a particular cell to be I, this cell is me. The next moment, the cell will die, will cease. So where have you gone? So this anatta means there is no thing unchanging, but it does not preclude a flux of energy. The soul is a flux of energy. This soul is a bundle of energy that carries your memories, your DNA, your characteristics, and all that. So that, for example, now you look in a certain way, and then after you pass away from this human birth, for example, you are born in heaven. Somehow that heavenly being that you have become will look a little bit like your human being. For example, the face might resemble your human face. Where did this come from? This bundle of energy. So in Buddhist teaching, the Buddha never said there is no soul. The Buddha said that, for example, when a being dies and his karma is such that he is going to be reborn in the womb, he has to wait, And what is this thing that waits? In the suttas it's called Gandhabba. Just sometimes some other books call it intermediate body. So he has to wait for the mother and father to come together. The mother is in the right season, and then when the egg is fertilized, then he is drawn into the womb. So what is it that goes into the womb? It's not this pure consciousness. It has a certain consciousness, must always come with a certain body. So just because we don't see ghosts, it doesn't mean ghosts don't have body. Ghosts definitely have a body. It's just a fine body that our human eyes cannot see, but maybe a dog can see, and a deva can see. A deva also has a body. Deva also has a body. The only thing, our eye is not tuned to seeing a deva body. But if you cultivate your mind until you have psychic power, then you can see the ghost body and you can see a deva body. And that's why if you are practicing very hard, they like to obstruct you so that you don't see them. Because if you can see them, then they are powerless already. They cannot do anything to you. Atta is simply anything which remains unchanging, which remains the same, that does not arise and pass away. Everything in the world arises, stays for a while and passes away. Arises and passes away. Because of that, the Buddha says, the whole world is anatta. There is no self. There is no something unchanging that you can identify as myself. But the mind tricks us into thinking that I exist. So you think that being that existed before I was reborn here, that is me. And after this birth, I will be reborn and such a thing. But everything is changing.
The soul.
Mm-hmm.
When it's reborn, the anatta or the consciousness together, the body go into, let's say we go into a womb form only or the universe or
Mm-hmm.
then isn't that the soul that is bringing?
You can call it the soul. I just mentioned that there's nothing wrong with calling it the soul. Only thing is, in the Buddhist teachings, even a soul is not something that endures forever. It is just a flux of energy, bundle of energy that keeps changing. That's all.
Okay. So this soul includes consciousness?
Yes.
And what else?
The body?
The body, the energy form.
Yes. You know, last year when I went to Indonesia, and then I was giving these talks, and then some people they have been learning Buddhism from the Burmese monks. And Burmese monks, their priority is the Abhidhamma. And the Abhidhamma teaching, when a being dies, the consciousness ceases here, and then the consciousness starts somewhere else. There is no being that travels from here to there. For example, if a human being dies and is reborn in hell, there is no thing that goes from the human realm to the hell realm. The consciousness in the human realm stops, and the consciousness in the hell realm starts. That is their teaching. There's nothing intermediate. That's why they say there's no soul. But this is not what the Buddha says. In the Buddha's teachings, something is dragged down to hell. Something enters the womb. So the Abhidhamma teaching in that sense is just contradictory to what the Buddha says. So when they heard what I said about the soul, they could not accept it. They said there's no soul in Buddhism. Buddha never said there's no soul in Buddhism.
But I read somewhere that the medical research shows that when people die at the moment of dying, there is immediately a weight loss. A very, very small amount of weight, a very weight loss.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Okay, yeah, I know the word soul, but in Buddha's teaching case, he never mentioned the word soul.
No. The Buddha only says there is anatta. So we have to be very careful with translations, I mentioned just now, they say they translated jhana as trance. Jhana is the opposite of trance.
Educational background, when we talk about soul, we have a preconceived idea what is the soul.
Because like in the Christian teachings, a soul is something permanent, everlasting. It is different from Buddhism. Yes, the Abhidhamma interpretation of mentality and materiality, nama rupa, is body and mind, which is not correct according to the suttas. Yes, you have contact and then only feeling. No, the cause, the origin of feeling is going backwards. Each one is going backwards. The origin of feeling is contact. The origin of contact is a sixth sense basis. You look carefully. Okay, shall we stop?